Good morning and happy Valentine's Day to you all. Today I thought, let's do something love related. I found this, or I got this idea of putting a message on a foggy window. And the beauty of this is you can really customize it to anything you want. And it's super easy. So I was experimenting a little bit to see, what's sort of the fastest, easiest way I could go about doing this. And the beauty, it's even better because you can use those old paintings that, are no good, or, a failed painting. You can paint over it and everything else, and it'll work out just fine. I like the one with lots of colors, so I think I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to be working on 100% cotton paper. This one is Arches 140-pound cold press. And I'm just going to tape down my edges here for a moment. And I'm going to be using a variety of colors. It should be artist quality paint, for rich color and everything. But I'm going to be using mostly Da Vinci. But it can be any brand and an assortment of colors. So I'm just going to tape this down and we'll get rolling here. I typically stretch my paper for everything I do. I wet it, I staple it down, and I leave it to dry overnight. I find that is one of the best ways for me to end up with a completely flat painting. Otherwise, you go to paint on it and it wrinkles. And just to show you what I mean by that, these weren't stapled down, and look how wobbly they are, right? So neither of these were stapled down, so my paper's like all wonky. So, all right. So let's go back to this one for a second. We're going to take a closer look here. And what I want you to look at is all of the really cool colors that are kind of hidden behind all of this fog. So I want to paint my paper with all kinds of colors. So that's step one. Take a nice big brush. I'm going to just use a combination of colors. You can be anything you want, really. Let's go with some yellow, maybe. Okay, just some yellow. The beauty of it, you don't have to show what's behind. If you wanted to show a little bit of what's behind, maybe you wanted a cat in the window or something, you could do like a silhouette of a cat, very loose. You wouldn't have to do it realistically or anything. You just have to do a silhouette. Maybe I'll grab another piece of paper later and see if I can do something like that. How about some reds? Lots of fun colors. So maybe you're looking through a windshield, or you're looking through a cafe window or something like that. Should be keeping an eye on the chat here. By the way, every Wednesday morning I am doing this. I am doing a free demo in watercolor. And you can see by the chat that there's a lot of people that have been here before and know the drill. They tell me where they're from. And we have a lot of fun every week. So if you want to join us, you can subscribe. And let's use some more color here. It's a great thing. It doesn't have to be neat and tidy. You can just basically paint any which way you want. But I'm thinking of putting my letters through here, so that's why I'm putting my my colors in here. Now, having a spray bottle handy is pretty helpful. Spray bottle having it handy is good because you can keep the colors flowing together. So I'm going to spray this as I'm painting it so all the colors kind of mix and melt together. Let's put a little more of this yellow in here. And I don't know, maybe some quinacridone gold or something. Use whatever colors you like, anywhere you like. That's the fun part, right? You don't have to make it special for, to make it look like anything. That's the great part. Now I'm going to put in something dark, just to hint at other things outside of the window. Maybe a tree, if you can imagine a tree or something. I don't know. There you go. Just a lot of color on a page. That's essentially what it boils down to. All right, so I'm going to wipe off my tape. There's always a lot of extra water. Well, not extra water, but there's always these beads of water that are on the tape, or paint that's on the tape, because the tape doesn't absorb the way the paper does. So the paper always dries much faster than the tape. So that's why I always wipe this off. Got a glob of something there. I'll put maybe just a few more little interesting textures or something in here. Don't know what it is, just kind of abstract at this point. Okay, now we have to dry this. So I'm going to take my dryer, and I want to make sure that this is going to be completely dry before I go on to the next step. I did this first one with bright colors behind. Then I did this second one with, I was trying to make it look more natural, more like landscape colors and that sort of thing, and I put that in behind, and it's just as effective, but I think the colors are just a little more fun. So I'm going to do some brighter colors here. I'm using a heat tool. Everybody always asks me about my heat tool, and it is a Ranger heated craft tool, which I bought from Amazon. And I also get an awful lot of questions about my watercolor palette, and this is unfortunately discontinued. But it is very similar to the Stephen Quiller palette. This one was made by Speedball, but the Stephen Quiller palette's quite similar. The layout of the colors that you can put in a range like a color wheel really helps with color choices. So if you want to take a color here and you want to dull it down, you just have to go across to one of the complementary colors. So the opposite of yellow is purple, so I would just go across. The opposite of blue is orange, so I would go across. Well, this one's not orange, this one's burnt sienna, but same idea, same family, warm and cool. Warm and cool. But yeah, red, green, and you arrange your color palette that way, just like a color wheel, and it can teach you an awful lot about color mixing. All right, so I'm going to write something on here, but I don't want to make the same picture that I just did, so I need a word or a phrase that I can write on my window here. So put your ideas in the comments. Think of the possibilities. You could put, if it was for a wedding, you could put, like the heart with the initials in it, like they do, like they carve into a tree or something like that. You could put peace if you wanted to do it for a Christmas type of thing. Any message you want. You could put somebody's name in there. Be mine, yeah, that's good. Kiss, like all the candies have good ideas, don't they? Yeah, amore, yeah. I heart you, yeah. That's a very popular one. All it takes is love. That might be a lot of letters, Laura. We have to keep it fairly short. I mean, you could actually do it, but you need a big window because most of this effect is, and we've all done it. If you have a foggy window, you write a message in the foggy window. So I'm going to just leave this to cool down. I've been using that heat tool on it, and now it's got to be cooled down to room temperature before I paint on it. But what I'm going to be getting ready is my masking fluid, and I'm going to put in my message. But maybe first I'll draw it in with my pencil, and that will make it a lot easier. That's okay. I heart you. I think I'm going to go with I heart you, just because that's an all-time favorite. I think many of the others, gosh, you could do all kinds of things, couldn't you? There's so many ideas, great ideas, guys. But I'm going to go with I heart you. And I'm going to use my masking fluid, right? My masking fluid. Bit of soap for my brush. And an inexpensive masking brush. Now, there is clean me. That's a good one. Yeah, I see it. I've seen that one written on my car window. But there's a benefit and a downside to using the masking fluid, and here it is. When you use masking fluid on color, on something you've already painted, it will lift a little bit of that color. So one thing you could do to try to avoid so much lifting is you could use a spray fixative, a workable fixative, and just a light mist of it. And that usually will kind of seal off the colors a little bit. And then you can paint your masking fluid on it, and it will be not going to lift as much. A lot of people worry about the fixative and what's it going to do to the watercolor, but most of the fixatives are for artwork, and they are archival, so it's not really too much of an issue. Now we may end up with lighter colors in here. We may end up with lighter colors. There is another alternative, and that would be to draw it on and have use something like packing tape. And you could put clear packing tape on it and cut around it carefully and then pull off the tape. I don't like that method so much, but it'll do. So let's take my pencil here, and I'm going to do a I heart you. Okay, I'm going to put my eye here. I'm going to do this fairly big. And big sort of bubble letters, but you can do any kind of writing you want. I mean, you're writing with your finger if you're writing on a window, right? So, I like to make it a little bit wonky. It looks a little bit more charming, I guess, if it's not too perfect. Right eye, heart. And we'll go This is why this is so fun. It's, you know, you really, how can you mess it up, right? It's anybody who writes on a window, you're just going to have, it's going to be regular handwriting. So I could have put just the letter U, but I'm going to put the word. Seems appropriate for Valentine's Day. All right, so I'm going to mask this off. But it's the frost and or the fog. You could actually make it look either like fog or frost, depending on the technique you decide to use for applying your that layer. But I'm just going to put this on. I'm going to try to put it on not too thick, because if I put it on too thick, it's going to take forever to dry. And we aren't here all day. I want to make this quick and easy, so I don't want to spend all my time waiting for something to dry. But this is something you could really do with multiple pieces that you're working on at the same time. So when I'm filling in with my masking fluid, and this is just a little masking fluid tip for you, but lay the masking fluid in the middle. Don't start at the edge. There's a big drip of masking fluid on the end of my brush, and if I start right at the edge, I'm going to get a little bump in my writing. So now this is one case where that would probably be okay, but you know, most other masking you need to have a little bit more precision. So I would start in the middle and then spread it to the edges. You know, take it over to where the line is. The other thing is, when you have a big area, you don't have to necessarily use a really large brush. Just lay your brush on its side, and it'll spread out that masking fluid pretty nicely for you. Also keeps, if you lay your brush on its side, it keeps it from putting on such a thick layer. How about using a fingertip to, yeah, I guess that would be a good idea. I'm not sure that, well, I guess latex, you know, if you don't have any latex allergies, that would be okay. But they actually do make latex-free masking fluid as well. But that's a thought, you know, stick your finger in and rub it. I'm not sure I want to try it, but that's a good idea, though. That really would make it quick and easy. But if you were working really small, I think that would be a little difficult. You know, if you were doing a card size. Like I'm working, this size is about 8 by 10. So maybe even a little bit larger. But if you were working small, that might be a little tricky to do it with your finger. Heck of a good idea, though. So I just did a bunch of colorful patches in my background. But you could sort of hint at anything back there. You know, just make it all blurry. So make sure the paper's wet as you're putting on your colors, and you could suggest, you could suggest people walking, or a street, or cars, or whatever you want. Christmas tree. Maybe not for Valentine's, but this is almost like safe, not safe, but temporary graffiti, I guess you might call this. Try not to put my hand in the wet masking fluid. Now there were a couple of things that I put on my original sort of test that I did, and that was I put some drips, because when you use your finger to write on a frosty window or a wet window, the one thing you're going to find is that there's always going to be a drip here or there. It's condensation, right? Now, that might not be so much the case if it were a frosty window, but I'm thinking it would be in a lot of cases. Okay, I can feel my brush is getting a little bit bogged down with masking fluid, so I'm going to give it a rinse and make sure I get all that masking fluid out of it. Re-soap it to keep going. That's very important. Don't let the masking fluid build up in your brush so much that, you end up with a big blob on the end of it. But if you do end up with masking fluid kind of stuck in your brush, it's happened to all of us, what you can do is you can use the kind of cleaner that they use for removing sticky labels. When you buy glassware or something and it's got a price tag on it or something, and it leaves this gummy residue, and so they make a product for removing that. What I use here is called Goo Gone, and it works pretty well to remove the masking fluid out of your brush, but you will have to work at it a little bit. The only thing is you wouldn't want to put any of that in the metal part of the brush, because the metal part of the brush also has glue, which holds in your bristles. So you don't want to compromise that. Just put only the bristles in. You kind of have to work it. It's not something you can just lay the brush in and soak it or anything like that. Just sort of massage that Goo Gone through the bristles. And I do that. I use like a little medicine cup, and then I get it out that way. When I'm finished this, I'll show you, because I'll have a minute or so to kill before I can actually paint on here. Now, didn't shape that U very well, so I'm just going over my pencil lines. The one thing that masking fluid will do is remove pencil lines. It's very good at that. If you've put a really detailed drawing on, losing pencil lines can be a real heartbreak after you've used masking fluid. So that goes back to that same idea of using the workable fixative. And I just use one that's designed for pastels. Yes, Goo Gone, exactly. But I use the workable fixative that's designed for pastels. I think I have one called Spectrafix, and I'll use that sometimes if I don't want to lose my pencil line. So I'll give it a little light spray with this workable fixative, and then I let it dry very well, and then I will go ahead and put my masking fluid on, and that saves the pencil lines. So if that's a concern, like if you're doing a crystal, I don't know, maybe not crystal, but if you're doing anything where you've got a lot of drawing underneath and you need to preserve it with masking, that that's one way to save it. Looks like I missed a spot here. Hopefully I didn't miss too many. I think I got it. Okay, so I want it to look like there's a drip coming down. So I'm going to do a drip right here, and it wiggles, and then it has a big drip on a little bit of a round blob on the end. And I can just pick anywhere I want for adding a couple of these. This makes it look a little bit more authentic. But make it wiggly. It never comes down the window perfectly straight. There. So I got a couple little drips that are coming down. Maybe one that's just starting from the heart. There we go. I was going to do one from the O, but I think that's a bit much, so I'm just going to make one that's looking like it's starting. All right, so pack this stuff away. I'll show you what I can do with this brush, because I do feel like this brush is starting to get a little bit of a buildup in my brush. And masking fluid doesn't take long to dry, but you really do need to make sure that it is dry. So first I'm going to rinse out what I have. I have a little cup like this, and it says Goo Gone on it, so I don't mistake it for something else. And I'm just going to massage. Let me zoom in for this. Okay, so I've got it's a little medicine cup or a little cough syrup cup or something like that. And I can actually see the little balls of masking fluid stuck in the bristles there. So I'm just going to massage this. Then I will take a paper towel and wipe. See what I can get out of it. Repeat, and I would repeat a bunch of times just to make sure that I've got every last bit of it out. When you spread the bristles, you can see whether or not there's any left. I can see that there's a little tiny bit left. All right. All right, so I want to get all that Goo Gone solution out of this. So I'm going to get it soapy again and just rinse that out. Color shapers are really good too. Not so good for detail, but color shapers are good too. I hope I showed that on screen. I think I'm zoomed in too much. And yes, I have tried a masking pen. They work really well until they don't. Then when they don't, you have a fair bit of masking fluid still left in the pen, I find. And I have actually taken them apart and tried to clean them and refilled them with my own masking fluid and that sort of thing. But yeah, sometimes you just end up investing a lot more time than it's worth. So I've tried all the methods. You know, if I need something fine with masking, I will usually use something like this or a glass pen or something like that. Now, we wouldn't be doing anything like that on this particular project, but all right, I'm going to rinse that out. And this brush is in good condition and ready to go again. Look at that point. And so I can actually continue to use this. I don't know how many years I've had this brush, and I only use it for masking fluid, and it's still in good shape. And so that's what I do to keep it in good shape. I know a lot of people kind of toss out their brushes and it just kind of seems like kind of a waste when you can save it, but that's what I do. Okay, it's still an inexpensive brush, but I can keep using it. Okay, now the fun begins. So the next step is going to be, I'm going to be using some Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. Really, any kind of gouache or white paint would also work, so let's not get too bogged down or worried about things. But I want to have a fairly even coverage. So this is the product I'm using, Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. But before I do anything, I need to make sure that all of my masking fluid is dry. It feels pretty dry. All those last bits I did, I think are pretty good to go here. So let's get a move on. So I'm going to take this Bleed Proof White. The lid's always so hard to get off. There we go. Now I tried a couple of experiments with this, and I can tell you one thing, that if you wanted to make your window look frosty, salt doesn't really work that well with this stuff. Works great with watercolor, not so much with this. So I thought, well, there's a great idea. I can do that, but then it didn't really turn into anything. So that would be wonderful if we could just do that, but it doesn't work well with the white. I want to make sure I've got a nice wet brush, my spray bottle. Let's spray this first. Get my paper nice and wet. And a nice large wet brush. So I'm going to go into this and basically just smear it on here. You don't want to stir things up too much. You'll move the color around too much, but you can see that, I really don't have to be all that careful with it. I'm also not trying to cover up entirely my background colors. Don't want to cover them up completely. I think I'm picking up a little bit of color, so I'm just going to make sure I rinse my brush before I keep dipping into my white here. Okay, so everything's very nice and wet and blending together. You don't really want a lot of brush marks on here, so that's where the spray bottle and tipping and tilting can really come in handy. I'm going to put a little bit more on here just for good measure. It always dries a little bit more pale than what it looks like when it's wet. And I'm using a really light touch. If I really don't want to move around my paint too much. Disturb my first layer. Okay, so I can use my spray bottle. And get this sort of flowing a little bit. There, you can see it flowing, and it does this very weird thing. It's like it starts to break up and crackle almost. At least what I was working on for my test was doing that. So I'm getting this very wet so that I can help it flow. That'll get rid of any of the brush marks. Try not to drip it on my table. You can really see it flowing down where the masking fluid is. But it's the nature of this this product that it kind of separates a little bit. You know what? That just makes it look more foggy. So that's actually kind of a good thing that happens there. And being a foggy or a frosty window, it really doesn't need to be perfect. Hang on a second. Oh, I got a pop-up. I don't know what happened there. Okay, sorry. I'm just looking at my screen here. I thought I lost y'all. I thought, oh no, I'm gone. That's no good. All right, so we're letting this dry. I'm going to wipe off the tape again. And I'm going to be watching for the shine to die down just a little bit. But there is something I can try to make this look even a little bit more authentic. And that would be to make some actual drips coming down the paper. So if I wanted to do that, I could take my brush here and I'm tipping up my board, and I'm actually going to let it flow down the paper. And this looks like a foggy window would have that natural dripping down. As gravity would have it, it's going to take all that moisture down the page. So some of that's going to look a little bit more drippy and uneven, and that just looks a little bit more authentic, but you can leave that off. That's okay too. All right, so while I have this tipped, I'm going to keep wiping this bottom edge because it keeps gathering there, and I don't want it to flow back, so I need to keep wiping this. Okay. I can make this look a little bit frosty if I just leave the finish to dry down a little bit. I'm going to help it a little with my blow dryer, but I don't want to get it too I don't want to get it too dry or the effect won't work. Whenever you have masking fluid, do not hold the dryer, whatever kind of dryer you're using, don't hold it directly over the masking fluid. Keep it moving so that it doesn't bake it onto your paper. Okay, so I'm sort of at that semi-dry stage. That's the stage I want, semi-dry. And I'm going to take my fan brush here, and I'm going to tap some water onto here. That just makes it look even a little bit more frosty, because it makes little mini blossoms, if you will. But, I mean, if this is messy, I mean, I could even take if I wanted to make it look frosty, I could take a piece of saran wrap and pounce it on here. Or, you can play and have all kinds of fun. Just the one thing I played with that didn't work was the salt. So that was the one that didn't work. No, Joe, I was just answering that question. But yeah, the salt doesn't work with the Dr. P.H. Martins for some reason. So I'm going to rinse that. Now I've got a lot of wet stuff going on here. But, you know, I got little speckles in here that kind of looks a little bit like the salt effect. But it's not going to work quite the same on the white as it does on your regular paper. I'm going to zoom in just so you can see a close look at, you know, what this stuff looks like when you dilute it a lot. It's like it kind of separates a little bit. All right. So you can see what it's doing. It's kind of dividing into little, like it doesn't stay smooth. It has this, sorry, it's not very in focus, is it? Let me move that over. There we go. All right, so you can see what happens. It kind of separates. And you can see here on this side how it kind of breaks up and it gives you that kind of a natural frosty look. It kind of does it on its own, so you really don't have to work at it at all. Okay, let me zoom out again. Bring this down, there we go. And I'm going to dry this. Things will have to be fully dry. Don't ever try to, I know it's tempting. I've done it many times, but it's tempting to take off your masking fluid before your paper's really dry or it just feels dry to the touch. It's not dry. So you'll have to really make sure that it's very dry before you try to remove that. Let me scroll back here just to see some of the questions. Can I use it? Yeah, I think any white would probably work. I only use the Dr. P.H. Martins white, but I'm pretty sure any other white would work. I should mention to you, I'm not sure what's going to happen with me next week for my live stream. I'm actually going to be on vacation, so I'm going to be. I'm not sure what my Wi-Fi will be like, so I'm going to be. I'm going to try to be live, but it all depends on where I am and if I have a good connection to be able to demonstrate. My paper is still quite buckled, so I know that it is curdling. That's a good word for this. My paper's pretty buckled at the moment, so I know that it is not fully dry yet. It's been a while since I've had a vacation, so I am looking forward to it. Normally I would just let this dry, but as we're all waiting for the big reveal, I'm going to speed this up, but I would definitely try to. It's still a little damp up there, so I'm going to keep going just a few minutes longer. Yeah, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to definitely be here. But in case I'm not, you'll know why. Glad I wasn't doing this yesterday. We had a power outage. That wouldn't have been good right in the middle. We have some construction going on nearby, and we've had a kind of a string of power outages lately. So I was in the middle of my class and the power went out. So not good, but what can you do? At least it was sunny. Okay, I'm in danger of getting that way too hot, so I'm going to be allowing that to cool down. Can't do anything while it's still wet, or while it's still hot. I mean, so we'll just have to wait. I could wave it around a bit, I suppose, but. You know, snowstorm. I hear a lot of people talking about snowstorms, and it's all very reliant on where you live. Normally, we have a lot of snow in February. Saturday was a crazy day. It was sunny and 16 Celsius. Fahrenheit, let me see what that is in Fahrenheit. That would be, I don't know, 50 something at least. 50, probably around 60. 60 degrees, I'm going to guess. Okay, so we're getting there. Now the big reveal. The masking fluid comes off. It's not taking off too much of the color, which is good. But the important thing about doing it this way, as opposed to just, for example, putting the writing on top, is that the colors here, you know, that you can see through that white a little bit. So you can see that the colors here match what's behind, and the colors here match what's behind, and that's important. So for that to work out well, you want to make sure that you are using the method with the masking fluid. So, tell me your ideas for using this method. How many ideas can you come up with? What would you use this for? What message would you put on? Would you use it for a wedding card or anything like that? I'd love to hear your ideas. One thing about getting together like this is, you know, we can kind of brainstorm, right? Bounce ideas off each other. Yeah, Murphy's oil soap is good for cleaning brushes. Murphy's oil soap I use more for cleaning my oil brushes. I don't use it on my watercolor brushes. In fact, I don't really need to clean my watercolor brushes. Just, you know, maybe my masking brush, and that's about it. So I'm picking up some of the white as well, because there actually is a lot of white on the masking fluid. This one's not as dark. I didn't make my window quite as frosty, but this one I did maybe darker colors in behind, so the writing shows up a little bit more. But if that happens, you could build up the writing on top. So I'll show you what I mean. I'll put pink here, I'll put yellow there, but first I'll wet the letter. So if you do it and it's like, oh, it's too light, make sure I got all that masking off first. I think I've got a little bit in the middle here, won't bother it. But I could put more pink in here. Very wet on wet to do this so that the colors mix and melt just the way they did on the original application. Then we have yellow. All right, so you can see that that letter stands out a lot more now. So you could really just go around with all of these letters if you wanted to make them stronger, and you could dripped that in an unfortunate spot. But you could go around all of your letters and just do that. Just remember to wet it first. If you have hard lines in these, it really isn't going to look appropriate. So I'm just, what I would do is I would just darken the writing that I have. Okay, let's get this yellow a little darker. Some pink in here. That paint is flowing really well because the paint in my brush is quite wet as well as the wet on the paper. I'm rinsing my brush in between each color change though, so that I can keep the colors fresh and clean looking. But you can see this is a pretty convincing representation of that thing we've all done at one time or another. And this applies. It doesn't matter where you live in the world. I mean, well, even I suppose you're going to get, you know, when you've got a different color temperature inside than outside, you're always going to get that. Yeah, birthday card, that'd be a good idea, Margot. You're always going to get this condensation on the window. You know, sometimes if you just boil a kettle near a window, you get a foggy window. And you could write something in it, snap a picture of it. There's your inspiration. I could have made these look more pronounced if I made the white darker, or not darker, but if I put the white on heavier. I could have, but I don't think it would look as frosty. I initially had a lot more on this one, I had a lot more on this, and then I had to try to wash off what I could because it was too much, you know. So you can go a little too crazy with the white on there. So you remember you want a very thin application. WGA. I don't know what that is either. So I'm going to go with more of the yellow. But I'm putting yellow on yellow, blue on blue. I'm not changing up anything. I'm being consistent with whatever's already there, because if I'm not, it really won't look continuous. So you can really see how the letters can pop out now. So I'm going to wet this. I should have done the O like a heart as well, like I did on the love. I forgot. Same colors in the same places. Almost there, and it's starting to shape up. Maybe I'll put a little bit more color there. But all of this is nice. All this lettering has to be very wet on wet. Right, build up the yellow. Do you ever take scraps of watercolor paper and just play with it? Just experiment. I didn't know how to do this, so that's what I did. Is I just took, you know, the backs of old things and played around with it. And it's a good way to sort of discover new ways or experiment with things without the pressure of it really turning out. You can feel a little freer to take chances. And I think taking chances when you are painting in watercolor is kind of an important part of the process. I think you need to branch away from just doing what you're told and play with things. There's probably other YouTube videos on how to do this. I didn't go searching for them. I just was trying to go by what I had. But yeah, there we go. So then you can see the all those colors coming through. Much brighter once you wipe away the fog of the window, and then you get all this color coming through. So it's kind of fun, when you have all these sort of this brightness coming through as well. So kind of fun. Anyway, that's all I need. That's all I need to show you. But get creative with this one. Go ahead and try to, put a this to me looks like I'm inside looking out, but you could be looking into a window as well. Like I said, you can maybe have a silhouette of a cat in the window or something like that. I don't think I missed any questions. Let me just scroll back just to make sure, but I think I covered most of that. Yeah, it's definitely a fast and easy way to do this. Window pane on the border. Actually, I kind of did the window pane on the border here, but I mean, you can paint a window pane. I think you can probably manage that. But with this one, I just put a dark line around to get the idea. But yeah, you can visualize that as a window, right? Yeah. So you can certainly incorporate a window into it as well. That's definitely, I was thinking along the same lines. And sorry, I'm scrolling back to see if I've missed any earlier questions. I don't think I missed any, but I like to double check just before I sign off. But yeah, the drips. I did show the drips. There is one other last little thing that you could do, but sorry, I'm just scrolling back. I'm almost through it. Hang on a second. I'm a slow reader. There's lots to read through here. Okay, so I think I got all the questions. Apologies if I missed any of them. I look for the capitalized questions. But one last thing that you could add. You could add a little bit of, if there's drips on the window, you could add a little bit of shine on the drips. So with my white, with my masking, or not my masking, but my bleed proof white here. So with this, I will just add a little shine on the drips, right? So that's a little something that you can add. You could even put a little bit in between, like little bits on the lettering as well, because as you're making your letters, because I tried it, I experimented with it to see, but you sometimes will get these little bits of shine on the letters too, but you don't have to put those on. I think it looks pretty good even without those, but I would put them on the drips at least. So that's the final thing. It's very, very small little detail, but yeah. So I hope you have a lot of fun experimenting with this one. Thank you for all the good wishes for a nice holiday. I will have a good time, and hopefully we'll see you next week. But if we don't, I hope to be back very soon and with more demos. So I'm signing off, and hope you have a great week. See you later. Happy Valentine's Day.